This is the Go Radio Business Show.
Well, Tom, again, not much to talk about this week, eh? Nothing's happened.
Well, it's been a very busy week. I think maybe you need a Go Radio politics show, Willie, because the politics and business are all getting intertwined, I would say.
Every week for the past 6 weeks, we've says, oh man, you wouldn't believe that. And then the following week, you're more astounded about what's happened this week. I mean,
I know.
to watch the circus last night, you know, in the Senate in America was unbelievable, you know. So
Yeah.
I think for Republicans to be leaning across the desk and ripping pieces of paper out of Democrats' hands and throwing them up in the air, and it looked like the scenes that you see today in the Serbian courts where we're all throwing fire bombs and smoke bombs, and honestly, you couldn't make it up. But on the serious side of that, Tom, obviously the tariffs that the president has put in place now looks as if now that the people in America are seeing what it means to them, and it's no good.
Yeah, so there's a great quote I was reading in the newspaper this week, and it's for one of the strategists at JP Morgan. And he said, the trouble with tariffs, to be succinct, is they raise prices, slow economic growth, cut profits, put up unemployment, diminish productivity, and increase global tensions. So I don't think there's many upsides there, Willie.
No, and it's interesting as well, Tom, when you see the moves that he's making. He's creating this madness, this siege mentality within Americans now, that how we become great again is becoming insulated. You know, so this view that everything starts and begins and ends here. I mean, look what he's done today. He's had plenty to say over the last few months about the influence of the Chinese in the Panama Canal. And he's went and got BlackRock in a room and told them to go and buy these 2 ports after C.K. Hutchinson. Right, so there's no doubt that people are afraid, or people are bending over backwards to do what they want to do at his request. And I think some of the utterance, and nobody fact checks him. I mean, I don't know if you've seen the right numbers. He must have said 100 times in the past 2 weeks, America spent 350 billion in the Ukraine conflict, and Europe spent 100. Well, the real facts are America spent 97 billion and Europe have spent 104.
Wow.
So obviously they don't want to get in a tit for tat. Nobody wants to shout them down. But when you've seen the despicable treatment of Zelensky in the Oval Office last week, it just, I mean, there must be Americans, Tom, serious people sitting crying about what's going on.
I mean, one of the difficulties we've got on the Go Radio Business Show is that because we record it and it goes out on a Sunday, by the lag of a few days, there's so much could have happened that we might be out of date. But I wanted to ask you, what do you think about Trump's approach to the Ukraine, saying, well, look, we have helped you, so we need access to your minerals, your rare earth minerals, etc. Surely, if America gets access to that, the people in Europe who put money into Ukraine should get it on a pari passu basis.
Well, I've got a real interesting slant on this, right?
Right.
I'm really disappointed that his first utterance about the conflict in Ukraine is all about money, right?
Yeah.
But saying that, see if he pulls this off. This is why Putin wanted to take Ukraine. So has Trump emptied the safe before Putin gets there?
Well, I did. I mean, it's one of these things when you can't sleep at night, you you go to social media, and JD Vance has said, he's the vice president, former Marine, I think, and he said the best security for the Ukraine is to sign the mineral agreement, because we will make sure that nobody invades the Ukraine because we'll protect our economic interest.
And that is a shocking way of negotiating. But my biggest problem, Tom, with this is, in his last term in office and in this term in office, he has had not one bad word to say about Putin and Russia. Right?
Yeah.
The arch
got to wonder.
enemy, the arch enemy of the US for how many years, since just after the Second World War. So I think that this is scary for me. That even when he spoke about Gaza, it was all about the money and about what Gaza could look like. You know, when it was it Trump Gaza, as it was the meme said. And I think that talking about Ukraine, it was all about money. And I'll tell you something else. If I was Zelensky, I would not trust him one bit if I thought I'd signed my minerals away and that was my problem solved.
No, you just couldn't trust him. But anyway, I think he might be coming to Scotland. He might be coming to my old stomping ground in Cumnock. I'm from New Cumnock, but Dumfries House, King Charles has invited him. There's an opinion poll saying that 70% of Scots don't want him to come. I've got a slightly different opinion. When you're trying to do business with someone, you don't need to like them, Willie. You need to get them and on your terms, get the best out of it. I think if we say, oh, you can't come, then we will come off worse. And that's not what I want for Scotland or the UK. What do you think?
Well, I think that I'm not against him coming, right? And if someone clever can have a word with him, then I would be delighted, absolutely delighted. Then it was all worthwhile. I think when he comes, Tommy, he'll come to Balmoral. So I'm sorry, I don't think Ayrshire will see him. Right? But he might, because he might want to visit Tunbury. So he might do his golf course up north and then have a quick visit down. He might, because he says, across that big ocean. He's already made the journey. But I think that my worry is, Tom, that before any negotiations started, he declared in the offset that there was likely no chance of Ukraine getting their territories back that the Russians have taken, and there's no way that he's going to get joined in NATO. So how he should be involved in that conversation at all is a mystery to me. Right? There's absolutely no way that he should be making a comment about what Ukraine should do. It looks like all these utterances in the last week looks as if he was a spokesman for Putin.
Well, so listen, trying to bring it back to UK business, Willie. So tariffs, I've just said, are not good news for any country. And Rachel Reeves is going to come out with a spring statement on the 26th of March. And it's been widely put out in the press that she doesn't have any headroom. So she's softening us up for that. Her borrowing costs have wiped out, the increase in the borrowing costs has wiped out any headroom. So she's now looking at a welfare budget. But I've become quite concerned, Willie, about another Labour Party flagship project, Workers' Rights Bill. Now, there's been consultation with business, which is good. They have listened to business, but once again, I don't think they've changed much once they have listened to business. Businesses are worried about somebody who's been with you for a day gets the same protections as somebody who's been with you for 10 years. You know, sick pay, you get sick pay, 80% of it if you go off day one in your sick pay. I mean, surely, Willie, this just adds to businesses' costs and is inflationary and is anti-growth. I can't get my head around about it.
I would agree with you. I would agree.
Would you?
And I don't think that this is well thought out and this is, just pressure. I think, again, like the NI contribution, the damage that will do to companies, I honestly believe that this is another policy where people will think twice. And what people will do now, because of both of the things we've just been talking about now, I'll guarantee you that companies will now not carry anyone that they don't need to carry. Loads of companies, when they have a wee downturn, say, no, look, these workers have been good, we'll keep them anyway. Let's keep going until we pick up. I don't think any companies out there at all now will be carrying anybody that they've not got their costs covered by 100%.
Yeah. So, I mean, do you have influence, Willie? Have you given your tuppence worth about this, or?
Well, what I can say is a positive. I was very fortunate last week that I managed to get half an hour with Jonathan Reynolds, which I think I mentioned last week, and also Andrew Malcolm from the Malcolm Group and Ian Anderson and Douglas Anderson from the Gap Group were in that meeting as well. And I'd have to say and congratulate Johnny Reynolds that he listened to what we had to say, and he went back down south, and I got a call from him to say that Rachel Reeves' chief special advisor was going to be in touch with me, and they wanted to hear in more detail as to what we had to say about the unfairness of the BPR, that's the inheritance tax for business. So I can just say that that certainly has proved, and if I get an opportunity to speak to Rachel on this, I would certainly, I don't think there's any way back. We're too far down the road now with what they want to do with the workers' rights, but certainly on the inheritance tax for business, active businesses, I think if we can get a chance to say to her, this is not supposed to kick in until next April, and if we can just, reason with the Treasury as to why this is not a good idea. I believe that they're only going to raise about another 1.1 billion, and I think that people will take steps to move on this that will make out that they end up getting less. As you keep saying, it's a tax take. I think that this could backfire against them.
Wow.
Right. So watch this space.
So another politician has come up with a radical thought, Willie. Russell, what's his name?
Finlay.
Russell Finlay from the Scottish Tories. Is he the leader of the Scottish Tories now?
He is, yes.
He is. And he said that kids should be allowed to leave school at 14 if they have an apprenticeship. But you know more about apprenticeships than I do. You've got a brilliant idea, which I know you're trying to get into the Labour Party about if employers take on apprentices and give them a proper apprenticeship, then that should be tax deductible. What do you think of that idea?
Well, first I'd like to say Russell Finlay as an individual, putting his politics aside, I admire.
Right.
But
okay.
I would just say to him that where I don't think this is a good idea is, first and foremost, the rules in relation to young people working in construction sites. There's a kind of MSLA as a regulation where you can't do it until you're 16. So I would be against it in that point. But what I would say is that I actually debated this morning with Charlie Mullins from Pimlico, ex-Pimlico, on the BBC this morning. There is other stations apart from Go Radio. But I would say that, and what I said to Charlie was, I'm happy that anybody's talking in any way about apprenticeships and anything help, but I said there's too much better ideas than that. And one would be that the government allowed all companies that take on apprentices to put their total cost against tax. Yeah. Right, so if you're making profit, and because 90%, 95% of all companies cannot charge the customer for the apprentice. So you carry that whole cost. So I think if companies were allowed to take that, and also, this is my main point, a young electrician or plumber or central heating engineer go to college and they're there for 3 to 4 years, the same as an accountant or a lawyer or whatever, right? Who was it determined that they should only get a City and Guilds and not get a degree?
Okay.
Right. So why do we not introduce all these technical degrees so their mums can be proud that the kids went on and got a degree? That's what they want. But also, at the same time, we're making this opportunity available to kids who are going to most technical colleges are actually turning into some part of universities now anyway. But I would love it if young electricians and plumbers and joiners and central heating engineers and air conditioning engineers were getting a degree rather than a City and Guilds. But also, for me, if you'd done that and then you allowed us to put it against tax, I think overnight you would create jobs for hundreds of thousands of young people.
Well, there you go. I hope somebody's listening, because the reason I like it is because it puts it back in the court of the employer. So the employer knows how to train, how to get the apprentices to help his or her business. and therefore it's not some civil servant that's writing an apprenticeship levy or whatever, which is not fit for purpose, you've always told me. Whereas this is the company deciding, right, I'm going to put this apprenticeship scheme together. I know what I'm doing. I'm going to allocate the capital, and if I can write it off against tax. I think it's genius.
Yeah, and another point as well, how I'm against starting an apprenticeship at 14, is that from 14 to 17 was the best time of my life having fun. Right? And I've been working since I was 9, delivering milk and doing various things and working, but I think to be working 9 to 5 in a job when you're 14, I just think it's a bridge too far. So, but the good thing is, you mentioned it there, Labour said they were going to scrap the apprenticeship levy, which was a dog's dinner, and hopefully some of these things that we're talking about today might be in the new policy laid down by Labour. Here's hoping.
Well, I think what you've said about Russell Finlay, I think in the run up to the Scottish elections next year, we should invite Russell Finlay, John Swinney, Anas Sarwar on to tell us about the business policies that are going to transform Scotland and why we should vote for them, Willie.
Yep, okay. We'll definitely do that. I see that our pal Willie Watt has said that, you know, even with all the turmoil going on at the moment across the world, that he still feels hopeful that there'll be growth in the economy and things, you know, will get better. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I think Willie's a seasoned financial professional. He sees the world through educated eyes. He's got to be upbeat because I think, you know, he's dealing with taxpayers' money. If he thought it was all going down the toilet, it wouldn't be a great message for anybody in Scotland. But Scottish National Investment Bank have put money into some well funded, high growth companies. That's exactly what they should be doing. I don't know what's happened to the budget. I don't know if it got cut. I don't know if he's getting his full allocation from the Scottish government. But, you know, Willie and the team there at SNIB usually know what they're doing.
What about huge news for Glasgow? This is generally a story we hear the other way about. What about a Glasgow-based headquartered company paying 657 million for an Australian software business, the Weir Group? What about that?
So the Weir Group is an absolute global phenomenon, Willie, isn't it?
Yes.
Is it still based in Cathcart?
Yes. Well, I
It
think they've
is.
moved that offices. There might still be an office there, but it's not the size as it was. I think Jim McCall actually bought a big part of the factory there.
Is he maybe buy a bit of Weir pumps or something?
Yes.
Right. But yeah, I mean, a Scottish headquartered business with global ambitions buying over in Australia, a software company. I love it.
Yeah.
Love it.
And what did you think of the fact that the order that we've given to the Turkish company to build the latest ferries that they've already reported they're going to be behind schedule because they can't get marine engineers?
Yeah, I mean, it said it's 3 months, going to be 3 months late. I mean, I don't see a look through to the Ferguson Marine fiasco, which is about 4 years late, maybe coming up to 5 years. So it's only 3 months and a complex, you know, building ferries is a complex thing. So I can let them away with 3 months, Willie. I think the bigger scandal was that Calmac, or whatever they're called, leased a ferry for 3 years to fill in, and they could have bought it much cheaper. I think we need some business brains in there, Willie.
Yeah. So let's finish this segment on the news. The great news that there is discussions going on at the moment where we'll be allowed to drink at football matches again.
Yeah, so just you were telling me before we come on air, you can have a pint of Guinness at a rugby match, but you cannot have a pint of Guinness or a pint of Tennent's Lager at a football match. I take it this was the police and public order and all the rest of it. So what do you think's changed, Willie?
Well, I think obviously there'll be a lobby from all the big clubs. I mean, because it's crazy that you can have 60,000 people at Murrayfield, or even when the rugby was at Celtic Park or at Hampden recently, where everyone can enjoy a drink in comfort in the stadium. Now, there is bars and there's hospitality in all the big clubs now where you can get a drink, but you're never allowed to drink in the stadium. In fact, when you were in the boxes at any of the stadiums, you had to have the curtains closed so the people in the stadium couldn't see you drinking. Right? And there's some places where you don't get a drink at half time. But I think that this can only be good, and it's certainly good as long as people behave themselves. I think it was a kind of knee-jerk reaction back in the day to maybe a bit of bother, and everybody says, right, let's ban drinking in the stadium. So I've got no doubt. I know a lot of accountants, some of the clubs will be delighted to hear this. So it'll be more money in the coffers.
Well, I'll say cheers to that, Ollie.
Cheers to that.
The Go Radio Business Show with Hunter and Haughey. Hit subscribe wherever you get your podcasts and never miss an episode.
Tom, another fantastic guest. You don't believe it, for Ayrshire again.
Well, I understand that Tony's from the poor end of Saltcoats. I didn't know there was a rich end of Saltcoats.
Right, well, let's introduce him first. So we're delighted our guest this week is Tony Rodgers, who's the CEO of the Emtelle Group. Tony, welcome.
Thank you, Willie. Thank you very much. The poor end of Saltcoats, Tom, I think that would be putting it nicely. I think when one of your researchers phoned me, I said I was from an area of a bit of deprivation, still a bit of deprivation, but I was brought up with my grandparents. And I tell the story that people probably don't believe now, who've only maybe known me in the last 10 years or so. But we had a porridge drawer in our house. And basically, when my granny was making porridge, there was this drawer lined with stuff. I've no idea. I think it was greaseproof paper, but could have been newspaper for all I know. And she used to pour the excess porridge in there and cut it into slices. And over a couple of days, it hardened up. And any time you were out playing, if you came in and you wanted something to eat, you went to the porridge drawer and you just tore a strip off and started eating that. So, no, I think to say I came from humble beginnings, I think would be fairly accurate. And I don't know, Tom, you're an Ayrshire man, but if you've been at Saltcoats recently, it's not got much better.
Well, listen, my wife's for the rough end of Stevenson, so you two can fight it out. Who's the poorest?
Well, I think if she's for the bottom end of Stevenson, then she probably remembers they used to say, my grandfather, I was brought up with my grandparents. My grandpa used to say they ate their own children in the bottom end of Stevenson. I don't know whether that's actually true or not, but it was always a good story.
Well, she's for the top end of Stevenson, but never mind.
Top end was for the posh end. So I think she's telling you fibs if she says she was for the poor end. But
I don't think there's a posh end.
No, there's definitely no posh end of Stevenson, but that's probably as good as it gets. In terms of background and stuff, grew up Saltcoats, brought up with my grandparents, went to school, did reasonably well, all grades and hires, but didn't do as well as I thought, and then went to Inverness because it was the only college that would take me when I went back to school for 6 years and realised it was a bit of a waste of time. So did that, got an HND in accountancy. And back in those days, BDO, the big international firm, actually had an office in Saltcoats. So
did they? What?
Yeah.
Used to be my accountants, BDO.
Did they?
Yes.
Yeah, BDO had an office in Saltcoats, and they actually, up until I think about 10 years ago, they had an office in here as well. So I did my HND and I went and trained with them as a chartered accountant. So I became a certified chartered accountant, passed my exams pretty much first time, failed my finals, resat them in Govan Town Hall and passed them. But even after a resit, for about, must have been nearly 20 years, I was the youngest ever qualified ACCA accountant in the world.
Right.
Up until I think about 4 years ago, there was an Indian girl based in Dubai who beat me because I was qualified at 21, and most folk who were doing their CA and all of that hadn't even left university then. So I was quite proud of that for all those years, and I kept checking the ACCA exam passes till somebody beat me, and finally qualified. I think she was 20 at the time.
Right. So you've got, obviously you've got a brain that thinks in numbers.
Yeah.
And it comes kind of naturally to you. Is there anything in your background that could have said that Tony's going to be good at numbers, or was it just a fluke?
I think it was probably just a fluke, a complete and utter fluke that I was good at numbers, and could see numbers and could understand numbers and understand a lot of stuff. But No, I don't think there's anything. I think the only thing is just my old granny, God rest her soul, who used to just keep pushing me all the time. We had no entrepreneurs in the family. We had no business people in the family. Everybody
No.
was everybody was too busy out there trying to work and keep bringing in some money so that we could pay the bills and feed people in the house. I think was
Right.
the
So Tony, you've now become a certified chartered accountant.
yeah.
So what's the next bit of the story? Because it's an amazing story, Willie. This.
The next bit of the story was I hated auditing like most normal folk because
Right.
and I still say it today when the auditors come into my business. Here comes the non-value added people because they come into your business and the partners hate it. The guys in the ground love it because I'm having a dig, but the partners hate it because they actually think they add value to your business as an auditor. It's the other services that add value, but the audit adds nothing. So I hated it, even though I was quite good at finding people who were trying to hide things.
It does keep you honest.
Only if you've got good auditors. If you've got bad auditors, you're just the same as everybody else. If you've got good auditors, it keeps you honest. But I hated auditing, absolutely hated it with a passion. So my first job was, it's funny, I'm not very good with timing. I left the profession and I joined, you must remember them, ATMAs, the travel agents.
My wife's first job was in ATMAs and sockets.
Whose first job? Your wife's?
My wife. That was her
Aye,
first job.
I'm probably worked there the same time as me. So I left the profession and went there. But I left there just as soon as the first Gulf War started. And and nobody could fly anywhere and everybody was cancelling holidays right, left and centre. But I think in adversity, particularly in business, and when you join something, and I knew nothing about industry and industrial practices, I'd just been an auditor. But when you go in and there's a crisis and the business has got its back to the wall, that's when you learn.
Right.
You don't learn.
So what did you join them as, Tony?
Sorry?
What did you join them as?
I joined them as the group management accountant, responsible
Right.
for doing the monthly management accounts for, they had at the time 700 branches
Wow.
up and down the UK.
Mr. Moffat.
Sorry?
Mr. Moffat.
Yeah, there was the old man Moffat, and the real power was his wife. And then the son, Jamie, was there. Jamie was there as, I think he was like CEO, and Mr. Moffat was the chair. And then they were just being about to be bought by RBS.
RBS, that's right.
Because the whole model of travel agents was, and back in the day, was that they took your money 3 months before you went on holiday and then paid the holiday company 2 months after you came back. So in
Nice
the
cash flow.
summertime, they had huge cash balances. And the bank saw this, and I think they bought them for the hundreds of millions they would have on deposit in the summertime. So that was interesting because they were being taken over and the Gulf War was on. So I joined them. And then after that, I had about 3 or 4 2 or 3 year jobs as I was learning. I was trying to pick things up and then realised that my true passion was in manufacturing and manufacturing businesses and making stuff and adding value. And then the first thing that I did where you could say I was an entrepreneur, I joined the team to do the management buyout of Penman Engineering 20 years ago.
Okay. So that was military vehicles, was it?
That was basically anything military and specialist vehicles based in Dumfries on the old aircraft hangars as you drive in from the sort of Glasgow roadside. We bought that business, as I say, from the older management who were retiring. We made everything from military trailers, G4S wagons, all the bomb disposal trucks that the British Army had. Every single one was built in Dumfries. We built the big green trucks you see that carry the nuclear warheads.
Yeah,
Yep.
huge. Yeah.
We built them. We built the other big things that we built were all the diplomatic protection armoured Toyota Land Cruisers all around. And if you ever see, there's a photograph of back in the day when Cameron and the French president went to Libya after the Americans had started bombing it. And there was a big convoy driving through, and there's 3 Land Cruisers, and they were all manufactured in Scotland by us.
Are they still on the go?
Penman, no, we sold it and they lasted about 9 years with the new guys. And then I think they just ran out of steam.
I was going to say, is there a good chance we're going to get kind of busy shortly?
No, well, there might be a chance that they get busy, but I think that's just like the sad demise of UK manufacturing across the piece, is that we don't make enough of our own stuff at the minute, and we should make much, much more, and there's no reason why we shouldn't make more. We've got loads of talented people, we've got loads of talented technical engineering people, and we've got loads of good finance people, and we should be making more in the country.
Well, what happened after Penman?
Sold Penman. I was the youngest of the 4 people who sold it, and made a couple of quid, but didn't make enough money to retire. So the business I'm in just now, as CEO, is owned by an Indian family based in Geneva, and they were looking for a CFO to come in and run the group, with the potential that the CFO could then become the CEO. So I joined as CFO of their group after going through like quite a mad selection process. I joined as CFO, did 4 years as CFO, and then was promoted to CEO 6 years ago. When I joined as CFO and when I became CEO, we had 2 locations. We basically had Scotland and we had Denmark, and we were doing we had India, but I managed to sell India. That was the worst nightmare of my life, running a business in India.
Even those Indian owners, Tony.
Horrific, Tom.
How did that go down?
Horrific. No, they're Indians, but Tom, they're the type of Indians that have never lived in India.
I see. Okay.
I never worked in India. They were Kenyan Indians who 3 generations ago had went to Kenya. So they'd never lived in India, but I think their heart ruled their head when they bought the businesses in India. But I had to go in, and my advice to any business, unless you're a huge multinational like a JCB who've made a huge success of being in India, just don't go.
So, Tony, just for the listeners and the viewers, tell us what Emtelle actually does.
Emtelle, we make fibre optic cables. We make the ducts that go in the ground that carry the fibre optic cables. We make the big ducts, which are usually about 4 inches. We make that in PVC. We connect every BT house in the UK. We then make the plastic that holds the fibre, which goes anything from 25 mil all the way down to a 5 mil tube with a 2.5 mil hole in it, which not a lot of people can make globally. We then do the fibre optics with the ceramic ferrules that are all polished, that go into the little box that's in the back of your house that comes in through the wall. And then on the power, and we do all of that, and we do the enclosures where you join. Basically, Tom, the easiest way to describe it, everything from what you would call an old-fashioned telephone exchange to the box behind in your house. We will make.
So who would your customers be, Tony?
Customers, generally, our customers would be British Telecom, City Fibre, Virgin Media, and every other ISP in the UK.
Wow. And you're based in Hawick in the Borders.
Well, that's good, but our manufacturing seats there. I've got a wee office with some of the senior team in Glasgow, but the DNA of the business is in the Scottish Borders. And believe it or not, Tom, in terms of telling you what we do, we're actually the world leaders in what we do.
Fantastic.
We bring things out and we launch new products and new solutions every month, every quarter. You'll see us bringing something to the market, and nobody else in the world operates in that development sphere. And 90% of these developments will come from the team that I've got in Hawick and the DNA that are in Hawick with these guys. And they're absolutely fantastic.
And where do you get talent to work in the Borders?
You have to grow it. You have to grow it, Willie. And you have to supplement it. I should go back and say, Tom, when I took the business, we had Hawick and we had Denmark. And since then, we've put on Germany. We've put on a huge, fantastic facility in Abu Dhabi. That was an acquisition in Dubai, which we then consolidated into Abu Dhabi. And we've also got a big manufacturing facility in North Carolina and the States as well. So I grew it from about 100 to about 450 million in 4 and a bit years. Since 23, 22, it's come back a bit to the high 300s.
So, Tony, see the innovation that
Yes.
you're coming up with, is that engineered by you to let
Yes.
your engineers,
Yes.
folks, think they
Absolutely.
can come up with ideas and then you reward them? Is that a kind of management incentive there?
No, it's a bit more. What usually happens is the big ISPs and telcos, and they're not really telcos anymore, they're data providers, come to us and say, we're building a network and we have a problem here. We've got no idea how to connect X to Z. Can you help us with a new solution, a new development, or a new product that either speeds it up, reduces the cost, or reduces the labour content? Because there's a massive shortage of skilled labour globally in what we do. And you got to remember what we're doing in terms of rolling out this data connection, effectively the fourth utility now of data. Everybody wants it globally all at the same time.
Right.
It's not just happening in the UK.
No, you're right. So when you say that you're a world leader, and it certainly sounds like it, is a lot of the stuff that you produce, manufacture, can you patent it?
Oh yeah, absolutely. We're absolutely driven by intellectual property, both around the manufacturing method, the application, and the trademarks that we develop along the way in terms of brand names and in terms of just how something looks, Willie. And we have a whole list of intellectual property. When we go to develop something new, the whole key behind the guys in the borders is, can we patent this? And we've got a guy who works for us, a patent attorney, doesn't work for us full time, but he understands our business more than some of the folk that work there. And that's been key to our intellectual property portfolio.
Who would you see as your big competitors?
Our biggest competitor is a Swedish company called Hexatronic. They are absolutely our biggest competitor. Bigger than us, maybe 1.5 to 2 times, but probably 1.5 times the size we are. And they're listed in Sweden. And it's that ability to have private market capital which has allowed them to grow quicker than us. That's the only thing. It's certainly no ability, and it's certainly no technical ability or brain power.
So with all this inventive, all these new data centres and what have you coming, is that huge opportunities for
Data centres, Willie, you just trying to poke the bear. When was the last time we had a data centre in Britain?
I think,
From any of the big four?
I think it's taken, was it 12 years now, someone said, to get planning permission for one?
You guys, data centres are the key to making sure we don't get left behind. We don't have any.
I think there's a
How are we going to fix that?
Well, I think at the moment, to be fair, behind the scenes, what we can tell you is, I think there's about 5 at the moment on the stocks, right? Try to start the process. And I know there's a huge development in Glasgow, North Lanarkshire going on just now, which is huge. It's all about 4,000 houses and jobs and what have you. And there's a huge data centre at the heart of that. I think Tom knows about one as well out near Livingston, where people are talking about it. There might be a data centre. So I think maybe coming to a town near you, hopefully in the next couple of years, might be our first data centres.
Wally, you'll be lucky if you get a hyperscale in Scotland or Britain because of the price of electricity.
Yeah, that's exactly right, Tony.
Yeah, but I think you're right.
looking
But what
to
they're
try and
talking
do
about,
one.
Tom, is I know for a fact, I can tell you that one of the applications is going to be self-sufficient in energy, right? And so whatever the mix is in the new eco stuff, but one of them has put a proposal forward where they're not on the grid. They're not on the grid.
Not on the grid. That'll be interesting to see and learn about, because we supply the big data centre providers globally. In fact, we shipped product from Scotland, believe this or not, we shipped plastic pipe, which you shouldn't do, to Singapore for a data centre.
Wow.
And we're supplying all of the big four globally on data centres. So we kind of know about data centres. And I was actually at Scottish Parliament last week and speaking to some of the people there. And I think what we're crying out for, and data centres is the big thing, because until you get the energy price environment right, you can't really do anything in manufacturing. And I pay 5 times here for electricity than I do in the Middle East. And it's green electricity, and it's green electricity in the Middle East, Tom. I've got wind turbine and solar electricity guaranteed. And the reason I can do that, or the reason they can get me at that price, is because they invested the profits they make from their gas and their oil into providing green energy so they don't have to burn oil. And believe it or not, the price here is 7 times higher than it is in the USA.
Wow.
And it's 1.5 times higher than Denmark. And it's exactly the same price as Germany. Where are the two countries that are not really doing well industrially at the minute? Britain and Germany. Germany, where all the large manufacturers, heavy industry and car makers are leaving in droves. And what I think we should be crying out for is a manufacturing strategy in the UK. And that's what I said to the Scottish Parliament Committee last week. Give us a strategy that we can all aim for as business folk.
Well, we'll certainly make sure if we get opportunity, we'll be poking the bear.
Well, you guys have got good bit of lobbying power.
Well, we'll try and use that, because certainly I do know, as I said, that there's 2 or 3 serious conversations at the moment about them going on here. But
We need them.
right, well, here's hoping we can get them.
I mean, what I would say to you, Tony, is don't wait for politicians to write the strategy. You write the strategy.
Oh, and I'm trying to force it forward every day and trying to make sure. But I said to them, Tom, the challenge I laid to them, and it was mildly topical, I said, we've just lost Grangemouth, 400 people. I said, any of us haven't stopped doing what they're doing at Grangemouth. They're just doing it somewhere else.
They're doing it somewhere else, yeah.
They're just not doing it in Scotland. I said, I've built a headquartered business in Scotland, where, as you said, Willie, I've got all these talented people in the borders, and I've got my R&D function, and I've got the high value add jobs in the group in Scotland. I said, I'm the CEO. If I retire, something happens to me, or the board decide to remove me, what are you doing as politicians to make sure that they stay in Scotland? Because we could get a German CEO next.
But one of the things, joining up what you've just said before that, is one of the main reasons they gave for moving out was the energy price. Ineos.
Well, exactly.
Right? For their manufacturers.
I do, and I was trying to tie that together. Because the biggest thing, and you come back, we go full circle here, guys, that I come from a sort of deprived background, and one of my biggest things is this digital divide between people who can get access to the World Wide Web or the data and people who can't. If we don't have data centres and we don't have that digital infrastructure in Scotland, we'll be left behind, but our young people will be left behind, and our industry will be left behind. That's why when I said don't poke the bear, Willie.
Yeah, but I think the problem is, and I'm kind of caught up in this a wee minute at the moment, you said that the big 4, and what you've got is, you've got huge conglomerates who want all that data, right? And what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to change that, and something that I'm trying to do with the data that I've done with my answer is I'm trying to give the data to the punter, right? I'm letting them use the data rather than someone else gathering it and making money out of it. And I think what we have done here, and already it's bearing fruit for the people, suddenly now what we've done is we've created economies of scale for the individuals, no for Amazon or Google or anybody else, or Meta, whatever. So now what we want to do is, for me, this is how we need data centres, right? And we don't need data centres actually controlled by the big 4. We actually need data so that the individuals can use that data.
Couldn't agree more. Couldn't agree more. It's about open access.
In the last minute, sorry,
Tony, can I, with the time we've got left, can I ask about your leadership? So, you know, you've kind of brushed over going from a chartered accountant and eating porridge and saltcuts, and now you're a CEO of a world-leading company based in the Borders. So where did you learn the leadership skills to lead this company and to create the innovation and to be world-class? How did you go about that?
I just think that where I went into leadership, it's about, my job is just to set the direction of the ship and where we're trying to go from maybe in the next 3 years, Tom, and then find the best people that work for me that can do that. But as you grow the speed that we've grown at, and the hardest thing for me has been identifying people who can take a business to a level and then having to find new people that can take it to the next level. But I cannot micromanage people, because in the early part of my career as an auditor, you get micromanaged every hour of every day with having to fill in timesheets with 8-minute segments or whatever on them. I set and agree the goals that people should be getting to over a 2 to 3 year period. Then we have a 12-year period, and then we have quarterly, and then I have catch-ups with my team on a regular basis. And I think that my leadership style is very much driving people to succeed by living off the sort of values of our business, which are very, very driven by empowerment. And it's up to me to pick the right team and then let them get on with it.
Yeah, I think you're being modest, right? And I'm sure Tom will agree with us. If you can search through hundreds or thousands of people and you can find someone who can not only run a business but can grow a business, that is a unique animal. And that's certainly what you seem to be.
Yeah, you're probably right. You get a lot of people who can, you can get, and that's the difference of trying to find people who have got slightly more to offer than what I call the corporate warrior. Yeah. The guy who just wants to come in and make sausages every day and turn the handle on the sausage machine. But you need loads of them as well.
Absolutely.
You need loads of them as well.
Yeah.
But
in the 30 seconds we've got left, we're on here to plug you. Tell anybody who's listening, anybody who's watching, how they can get in touch with Emtelle if they want to use your services.
They go to emtelle.com. You'll see our global sites and our global contact details are there. Whether you want engineering help, whether you want to actually buy something for us, or even if you want to get in contact with me, it's all on emtelle.com, emtelle.com.
Brilliant. Tony, what a story. Thank you so much for coming on the show.
The Go Radio Business Show with Hunter and Haughey. Hit subscribe wherever you get your podcasts and never miss an episode.
Tom, got a great guest this week on the boards you can't afford. Annabelle Beckwith, who's the founder of Yarrow Journeys. Welcome.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Hi, Annabelle.
Hi there. Hi. How good to see you again.
Well, it's nice to see you and not in Dundonald.
Not in Dundonald. We used to just bump into each other in the stairwell at Marathon House.
So you know each other?
In passing, en passant.
Okay, okay. Tell us a wee bit about yourself, a bit about the business, and then we'll get into your question.
Great. Well, I design and deliver leadership training and coaching programs, basically. So working with leaders in a wide variety of organisations. I've been doing it for the last 2.5 decades, basically. And at one end of the size spectrum, it's working with leaders and emerging leaders in large organisations, in global corporates. At the other end of the size spectrum, it's working with leaders who are scaling up their businesses, where a lot of the stuff around leadership, as the previous guest has just said, is you learn as you go and it's reasonably instinctive, but there's an awful lot of stuff that isn't instinctive. And so that's where I and my colleagues step in to ensure that the skills that leaders are building within their businesses, not just in their senior team, but with those who are in a position where they have to deliver results through other people, that's what we come in and do, basically.
Yeah. And how long have you been doing that?
About 25 years. I started very young, yes.
Yeah. I was going to say that. Must have been in kindergarten.
I know, yes.
So what is your question for the board?
The question for the board is, at what point do you feel you start to become a bottleneck within your business? So one of the things that the previous guest was saying is that he knows that he can't micromanage. He's got to bring people in and he's got to allow them to then do their jobs. But at what point do you find that leaders start to become a bottleneck in their business and therefore have to step back a little bit and develop the leadership capability of those within their business who are then working through other people to deliver their business results?
Do you want to go first, Tom?
Yeah, so it's an interesting question, Annabelle. I don't think there's one answer. One size doesn't fit all. I believe it depends on the business. It depends on the sector you're in, etc. But, as a leader of the business, I was always looking for people to replace me in certain things. But there were certain other things that I knew nobody could do a better job. I don't want to sound arrogant about that. There was plenty of stuff that I needed to delegate, but there was a couple of things that I knew I was pretty good at and I didn't want to, and I shouldn't delegate within the business. And I think as entrepreneurs, we start off thinking we're great at everything and we soon find out we're not. But having an honest conversation with yourself and giving your own scorecard of what you're good at and perhaps what you should give up. There are better people than you to do it. That was constantly on my mind. When did I start to think about it? I mean, really early on, if I'm honest, um, because our business was growing so quickly. I had to find talent almost every month. But, just having that honest conversation with yourself and then hopefully having people run about you who would be honest and tell you what they thought without, offending. I think so the leader has to create that environment where quality people can really excel. That's what I was always worrying about and trying to do. I don't know if that's an adequate answer. Wally, have you got a better answer?
Well, I would just say that I probably learnt the lesson too late, right? The problem with my company as we were growing is we took this amazing quantum overnight. So we went from a 30 million to 120 million turnover overnight, and we went from 2,000 people to 8,500 people. That period, if that would have been an incremental increase, I would have thought about it more, but I get caught in the hop. So, but what I'd say, what I've learned from that is that after that, I was always on the lookout for leaders, right? Whereas before I wasn't. I realised that I had all these holes that I had to fill people in. And after that, everywhere I went, if I was in a restaurant or no matter where, if I seen a maitre d' who I thought was brilliant, right on the ball, I think, I wonder what he can fit in my business. And up until that happened to me, it's fair to say, I was never talent spotting. So I would say that my experience of that is that I don't think that companies can think about it too soon, especially if you're on a growth path where you're trying to grow your business 10% or 20%, per annum, year on year. I think that you should certainly be looking at talent. I would like to think that I got lucky and I ended up with a few good people, with the amount of people that took it across for other companies. But I would say to you right now that we have found in the last couple of years, maybe just after COVID, it's been a big weakness in our business where we had grown and we didn't have the right caliber of people running those businesses, and it meant that we've had to have a deep dive in 2 or 3 very large contracts, and we've had to maybe have a look again where we rushed after COVID. People just got worried that the talent wasn't there for some reason. Not everybody disappeared. A lot of people didn't want to work, and I think people, to be honest, were running about hiring people that were into roles that were maybe a stage above where they would be. So I would say on the question that this is really, really important. And I know that you're bringing out a book about, Built to Lead. Is that right?
It's called Stepping Up to
Stepping
Lead.
Up to Lead.
Yes.
Stepping Up to Lead. So I think that would be interesting, and it may be a good read for people with SMEs that are trying to grow their businesses.
Yeah. Yes.
So what do you think the answer is?
Me? Oh, well, I would agree. I don't think it's too early to start looking for leadership capability. And it's often the case, isn't it, with SMEs and those who are at the start of their scale-up journey, where it's like, we need somebody to do this now, to bring somebody in who fits the hole, who fits today's hole, without necessarily, as you've just said, thinking about now, do they have the aptitude and the attitude and the ability to grow with the business? Yeah. Do they have that latent potential within them? So looking for those things is going to be really important. I think it's also a really crucial thing that, and this again is, I was fascinated by the guest today, when he was saying about growing your own, that there's that as well, because a lot of leadership skills and management skills aren't necessarily instinctive, they can be taught. Yeah. So making sure that those who you are bringing into your business are actually prepared for the leadership roles that you're looking for them to fulfill. Statistics show, I think CMI last year was saying 80% of people who are promoted are not prepared for the role they're moving up into. I mean, what kind of sense does that make? So preparing people for a leadership role and setting expectations as to what you want leaders within your organisation to be able to do are all going to be part of the mix there. So as you've said at the start, Sir Tom, it's not like one answer. There's just a bunch of answers.
So I've got a question for you.
Go on then.
Obviously, hearing now the service that you're offering, how did you come up with the name Yara Journeys?
Do you know what? So it was a long time ago on a galaxy far, far away, and a friend and I were looking to set up the business, and we thought, what will we call it? And we liked the idea of metamorphosis. Yeah. And so we were thinking, well, do we have a butterfly? But that's a bit girly because we don't want to be too and so she came back and said, there's this Arabic word yara that means butterfly. So we thought, brilliant, that's what we'll do. However, a couple of years later, I was doing some work in Saudi Arabia, and one of the ladies said, why did you call your business Yara? And at that moment, I thought, oh, please don't tell me that it just means carpet or window, something really pedestrian, or even worse, something awful. And then she said, oh, my daughter's called Yara. And I thought, thank goodness, it's going to mean something lovely. And whilst it does mean a butterfly, so we do have our idea of metamorphosis, she said that it's a small flower that blooms in the desert. And at that point, I was doing quite a lot of women in leadership programs, working in the Middle East and in Malaysia, so it fitted with the culture, so we kind of stuck with it. But that's...
So let me tell you an interesting story and how I come up with a name for a company. I had a friend of mine many years ago who was setting up a distribution company, and we were giving him a wee bit of help at the start, and he says, I need to come up with a name. And he said to me, you're good at all this stuff, so what should we call it? And I couldn't think of anything. I says, well, my favourite number's 17. So why don't we just call it 17? And he says, no, what, the 17 distribution company? And we couldn't think of anything else. And I spoke to my son, who's married to a lovely lady from Paris. And when she told me that D-set was French for 17, he called it D-set. Right? And I need to tell you, this was about 15 years ago. It was a start-up, and he sold it a few weeks ago for millions and millions. So 17 was lucky for him as well.
There you go.
Lucky 17. So Annabelle,
yes.
Give your book a plug before you go.
Yes, the book, and it's being uploaded as we speak, so we're on Amazon time. It should be there within the next few days. The book is called Stepping Up to Lead, a practical guide for your first people management role. And in essence, it does what it says on the cover. It is there to be a practical guide for those stepping into their first leadership role. That might be executives within a larger organisation. It might also be entrepreneurs who are building their team for the first time and are starting to grapple with all of those people problems that you don't realise that you're going to have, but that crowd in. So, and I've co-authored it with my daughter.
Brilliant. Good luck. Thank you so much for coming on the show.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Well, thank you, Annabelle, and good luck with the book.
Thank you so much.
Brilliant.
All righty.
Brilliant. Well, Tom, into another brilliant programme. I've got no doubt we'll have plenty to talk about next week, but for all our viewers and listeners, thank you for joining, and I hope you enjoyed the show. If you're watching it on YouTube, please hit the subscribe button, and we know that you're out there. Thank you so much.
And please remember, subscribe costs you nothing.
The Go Radio Business Show with Hunter and Haughey. Hit subscribe wherever you get your podcasts and never miss an episode. Go